Uh-oh. I have not got my little clapper ready. So hang on just a second here. I have a little pouch on the back that holds my chalk. Clever, huh? Daily Art Adventure number 552. And let's change the name of it to Final Edit. Woohoo! Okay, which, as you know now, is no longer the final layer, but I still call it Final Edit. All right, same date. So there we go, Daily Art Adventure number 552. Final edit on a big painting. I've done several things. Take a break, listen to a YouTube video, eat lunch, and done pencil work over this whole thing. And then during the course of that, I discovered several little things that needed to be corrected, so I've made those corrections. All right, let's launch right in then to, come on. Trying to get my monitor to come up and start working now. There we go. All right. Now I can see your chats and so forth. Final edit layer. The slowest layer by far, because I have to make a lot of decisions. But even though it's the slowest layer, it should be the layer that I put that covers less of the canvas than any of the other layers. Needless to say, it's the most important bits of paint is what I'm going to put on the canvas. Hang on a second. Happy to say a heat wave has hit central North Carolina since this morning. It must be close to 60 now. All right, so there are three places that I can start the final layer. One is the farthest away object, which in a landscape, of course, is always the sky. Another option is to start with the lightest, brightest, whitest thing, and then go dark from there. The third option is to start at the focal point and work out from there like rings from in a target. Okay, so I honestly don't know which of those three it's going to be here. Let me sit down for a second and think. I'm really anxious to clean up the sky because it needs, so that sometimes that anxiousness is a good thing to follow. Where is the focal point? By the way, that does not disturb me a great deal. Every once in a while, a viewer will say, or a student will say, well, where's your focal point? The concept of a focal point. Every rule can be broken, goes without saying, right? So not every painting has to have a focal point. That is very much correct. But it's not so much focal point. A better way to think about it is hierarchy of focal points. What's your number 1, 2, 3, 4? Beyond that, gets a little too sketchy to figure out. So clearly the candidates here are this splash of light, and I'm looking at my aluminum painting over there for cues. One is there. Another is the convergence of sky. It's not very focal right now because this is quite dark, but if this were popped up the way it is in my last painting, in my last sketch, this is intense and bright sky. This area is a very strong candidate for number 1 focal point. And then, of course, the figures down here, but no, they are not going to be a focal point. They are, in fact, a psychological focal point. It's important for you to have that concept in your vocabulary. anytime you're doing a scenic painting or landscape painting, if there are people in it, simply by the virtue of the fact that they are people, they draw a great deal of emotional weight in the scene. But they don't necessarily need to draw a lot of visual weight. That's clearly the case in this painting. This couple is fairly prominent. You know, these two figures, that's all there are. There's 4 people, 1, 2, 3, 4. Much less prominent, but I think their placement in both cases is significant. And it is reflected, ironically, by the photograph that there are people in both of those. In the photograph, there's 2 men sitting on the bench, and there's a 3rd man walking back here, but I didn't find those necessary. So it looks to me like the focal point is definitely going to be in this range. That's too big for a point, but these two, and as I proceed, I'll have to decide which one gets priority and which one gets second. All right, because of that, then I'm going to start up here and very early on, do some work in the sky, cleaning up this tree, making it look a little bit more like a tree, and making the sky a little bit brighter, pop that sky forward a little bit, and this sign as well, and really both of these signs. Now, I will tell you that, again, in my new phase of painting that I think I'm coming into, I'm going to give myself permission to simply take more time, to not paint quite as quickly, and to think more carefully, especially in this last layer. All right, enough of that, enough talking. Let's start painting. I'm going to start with that sign, the sign that says Aspen Avenue. I'm mixing up a very warm white or a very pale yellow ochre, whichever you want to call it. As you can imagine, because of my strategy in the opaque world, now that I've entered the opaque realm, I want to put down a color and then virtually every time come back and put a slightly lighter version of that color on top of it. Which means then, among other things, that I'm about to start painting the white part of this sign. So that means I intentionally mix up a slightly darker color than I know I want in the end. Does that make sense? So I'm leaving myself headroom, so to speak. I'm intentionally putting down a color that is darker than I'm going to want. All right, let's zoom in here. I just hope that after I zoom in that I remember to zoom out when I move somewhere else. Looking at the photograph again, I've actually spaced out my letters differently than they are in reality. There are a couple of things that I habitually do. Did I say that strongly enough? Habitually. There are a couple of things that I regularly do in this final edit layer, where I'm finally using what could ostensibly be called opaque paints, even though in reality, technically, much of what I'm putting down is actually translucent, but I call it opaque. If I put it down thick enough, I'm already having to mix up some more of that color that I made. I call it opaque paint, and even though, like most of the strokes that I just put down were actually translucent, you can actually see through them slightly. But one of the things I habitually do, I wonder how many important times I can say the word habitually during this broadcast. Okay. One of the things I do is intentionally leave gaps between my strokes. I do this a lot. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You could consider even the little bit I've done already to be as many as 15 intentional gaps between the strokes. Now, what I'm doing right now, I typically call fastidious painting, right? Fussy painting, tight painting. Even though I'm being careful not to just color in the lines, so to speak, right? Quote unquote. In spite of that, this is still fairly fastidious. Very, very useful to use my left hand in this case. That helps me a great deal to not get too fastidious. However, having said what I'm leading up to something. I'm just trying to decide. I'm trying to pick my weapon here. I think I'm going to pick the handle of this brush. I'm probably going to leave that. I could come up here and diminish a little bit of that. So whenever I paint in a fastidious or overly fastidious manner, I again habitually, to use that word again, I make a point usually of coming back and messing up the painting that was done too carefully. Does that make sense? Now let me look at this sign really carefully here. Okay. There is no break between the white arc and the white body of this painting down here. I've mixed up a slightly darker color on my brushes right now, because as you can see, I want this sign to fade from light to dark. In fact, I pointed out at one point a couple days ago, virtually every flat surface in this painting, all the signs, they all do the same thing. Notice, light to dark, light to dark, light to dark, with a surprising lately added shock of white. But they all, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the one way up there at the top is light at the bottom, dark at the top. Yeah, take note. That's not an accident, not a mistake, not a oversight, very much intentional. Why? Because, oh boy, trying not to get overly philosophical. Here's the overly philosophical answer. Why? Because our eyes like to see stuff. Given the choice, our eyes would rather see yes stuff than no stuff. I know it's a very tortured syntax. I say it that way on purpose, so our eyes would rather see more than less. It doesn't quite have the same pop to it. All things being equal, and many times all things are not equal, our eyes would rather see more variety than less variety. And one of those varieties is just you can write this down. I have written this down. You can write it down. Our eyes would rather see a graduation than a flat. Instead of a flat surface, our eyes, and by that of course I mean our brain, of course, the seeing part of our brain, Our eyes would rather see a graduated plane or graduated color. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. Fades from lighter to darker. I've known that principle for years, have taught it as such, but it has become even more important to me as the years have gone on, not less. I don't know if I will ever paint a building again for the rest of my life where we, the viewer, are seeing a flat side of a building. You with me? Any building. There's not really one here in this painting. We know there's a building there, but we're not seeing it. We know there's a sliver of a building here, but again, we're not seeing that. So just imagine a painting, a building, a house, a barn, where the flat side of the building is clearly in view. It's possible I will never ever again paint such a thing, such a building, without having the flat side of the building almost violently bisected by a shadow. Light, sun hitting part of the building, sun not hitting part of the building. Let me say that's a strong statement, and it may not be true, but it's very possible that I will never again in my painting career ever paint a building where we're seeing a flat plane of the building, where there will not be, in fact, an angle shadow across the building. Part of the wall will be in sun, part of the wall will be in shadow. Not half and half, but either more shadow or more sun, one or the other. That's a radical statement worth paying attention to. And I may be exaggerating, but it's possible that I'm not. So here I am again, intentionally messing up the stuff that I just a minute ago painted in an overly fastidious manner. On purpose. So I can imagine someone who perhaps is a better painter than I, incorporating those kinds of movements into the very act of painting itself. And I do some of that. But what you just saw me do twice, over here and then again here, was in fact, go ahead and paint in an overly fastidious manner, and then make a separate step or stage of coming back and messing it up. That is irritating me a little bit. That is entirely too neat. Too tight, too hard-edged. What looks like, this looks like an R, doesn't it? There we go. Okay, hang on just a second. I'm going to pick up a rag and simply just remove some of the paint that I just put on there. I think one of the things that I will probably do in this new, what I think is going to be a new era of my painting. There, that's better. I think one of the things that I will do also is give myself permission to go back and forth in this final edit layer to dip back into dark, transparent, so to speak. Dan Nelson's step 1, 2, 3 is that at this point everything from now on is opaque and white, light, not white, but light, has white in it, right? So that's the formula. What I'm saying here is I think that in this new season, I will probably give myself permission. I already did this, but I think I'll do it more often. I'll give myself permission to dip back into darks, if you will. Yeah, let me go ahead and do it right now, the kind of thing I'm thinking about. So I'm mixing up some oxide red and ultramarine blue for my favorite dark color, which I call dark black, B-L-E-C-K. If I don't want a color, if I don't want chroma, and then a fair amount of liquid in that mixture so that and everything that I'm doing here, not everything I'm doing here is designed to make these letters more legible. Some of what I'm doing is designed to make it more accurate, but some of what I'm doing is not necessarily to make it more legible. But in fact, to make it more interesting. So I started out there painting with one hand, and after a minute it just starts to drive me nuts. So I've got to get, one of the downsides of painting with two hands is that I have twice as many brushes to clean, because I usually can't just mix up, a color, in this case dark black, on one brush, because if I only have one brush with that color on it, I have to paint with just that one brush, and that drives me nuts. In a good way. I'm glad. It's like I've developed an inner alarm system that goes off if I find myself painting for too many seconds or minutes with just my right hand. That's looking better. I just had an experience that is worth mentioning. Just that pause, right when I said that's looking better. I looked up there. Let me explain this, because this is worth some of you hearing this. I was painting red, right? I started here, and in my mind I'm thinking, okay, I've got quite a ways to go. I've got to do red here, 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 here. And I know I'm going to fade out, and I know it's not going to be this intense all the way, but I'm still thinking I have to go quite a bit. But I interrupted myself to do the dark outline. Then when I came back and looked at the red, I went, oh, this is the part I want you to hear. When I looked back at the red after a brief pause, a brief break from the red, I looked at it and went, oh, I'm almost finished. That's a sign of your brain trying to make you paint well. It's your eyes. I should say your eyes trying to make you paint well. Your brain is more likely to get you in trouble, because it's your mind, so to speak, that says gotta paint the red, gotta paint the red, gotta paint the red. But all of a sudden my my eyes kicked in, the seeing side of my left brain, my perceptive, intuitive left side of my brain kicked in and said, oh, wait a minute, no, 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 no. You're almost done with the red. I've done more, as you can see, but less than I was going to, less than I had in mind when I started. Now I'm mixing up a darker, duller red here, adding a little bit of permanent rose and oxide red, again, which is brown, you know. Don't be confused by the name. Oxide red is close to burnt sienna. Let me step back now and look at just that sign. I'm not crazy about the letters. They're still too regular. I'm going to add some. They have a slight green tint to them, which I like, but because of that, I'm going to add some red to them just to give some vibration, some visual vibration. It's not because there's red in the photograph. Do you understand? Okay, I'm going to leave that behind now for a while. I'll keep those red brushes and break out some more brushes for some blue painting. Hang on just a moment here. I have to clean up my palette again. I've run out of spaces for mixing, so. I do not expect to broadcast the entirety of this phase. First of all, I don't expect to finish this phase on a painting this size and taking my time. I don't expect to finish today. Plus, my wife and I have a dinner engagement, so I'll just broadcast for a while here. But not put myself under any kind of pressure to feel like I have to broadcast the entire process. Probably, I would love to finish this painting tomorrow, or at least get through the broken color phase, and I can. Oh, you know what? I just realized. Just dawned on me, in this new painting phase, boy, evidently the concept that I've entered a new era of my career is really growing on me, because obviously I'm just thinking that way. In my earlier phase, I would frequently come back to a painting on day 2 after it's dry. Doesn't mean the next day, but after it's all dry, and do glazes and so forth. But many times I didn't. Okay, in this new phase, no, guarantee almost every painting. So what does that mean? So I need to redo my list that I just published, and you can find on my community there on YouTube, my list of steps, because after now, final edit, then broken color, then I wait for the painting to dry overnight, day or two, then I'm going to come back and do glazes. So I'm going to actually be adding new. Before now, that final layer has been sort of like an optional. About 50% of the time, I come back and do that. No, in this new phase, that's going to be nearly 100% of the time. And in fact, I give myself to do that last process, final glaze and touch up, more than once. So there we go. That's a breakthrough announcement, folks. The color that I just mixed up there is too light. Oh, and now I just added way too much phthalo blue. Can anybody say way too much phthalo blue? That's an inside joke for all of us who are painters. That's only funny to people who are painters. Can anybody say, whoops, too much phthalo blue. The only people who are chuckling right now are my fellow painters. Because you can identify, yes, heck yes, all the time. Happens all the time. Because phthalo is, you just have to be very light-handed with it. A little goes a long way. It behaves differently. So does Indian yellow is similar in that regard, and permanent rose. It's all three of those, and as you may know, that those are my three favorite colors, probably: phthalo blue, Indian yellow, and permanent rose. They're not the colors I use the most. The colors I use the most, in case anybody wonders, are ultramarine and oxide red. All right, I am in grave danger right now. I'm going to take my glasses off. I am with this kind of stuff. So it's sky holes, right? And I'm in grave danger of overdoing it and ending up with sky dots. Right, Tony? I think it was. Forgive me. I should remember which one of you coined that term. It's hilarious. Yes, sky holes done poorly become sky dots. Over dotification. One of the grave hazards of all painting, and especially when you commence to doing sky holes, what are ostensibly sky holes. Done poorly, they become sky dots. I did not make that up. I think that was Tony. Great expression, great description. Sky dots. Sky dots are not nice. And then you have to do anti-dotification. Yes, these are terms we have used on this channel already. Anti-dotification, a very important corrective measure for over-dotification. So let me try to analyze here. So what is it that leads to over-dotification? I'm going to try to give you some descriptors and give them to myself even. Okay, here's what causes over-dotification. Dots, points of paint that are too similar in color. No, I don't mean that. I'm sorry. That are too similar in size. That's what I mean to say. Okay, so beware when you're making sky holes. Like for instance, I don't know if can you see this? No, let me zoom you back in. Hang on. There we go. I don't know if you can see this, but I have here 3 dots, 1, 2, 3, that are all dangerously close to the same size, and they're all in a row. So let me fix that right now by taking the middle one and dragging it down there. So that's danger number 1. Bits of paint that are too similar in size. A close corollary to that is bits of paint that are too close in shape, that are too similar in shape. Now, painting with 2 hands helps considerably with that. Painting with 2 different size or shaped brushes is a good little safeguard. But I think even more important so I think similar size is number 1. And a correlator to that is similar shape. But I think next to similar size, too many, what creates sky dots is too many hard edges. So sky holes, which like I'm creating right now, that are too similar. No, I didn't mean to say similar. that are too hard edged. Similar of size, similar of shape, and hard edge. So as you can see, I'm trying to make most of my marks soft edged. Now that is really going to mess up some of you students, because the number one mistake, I believe, that I see students making when it comes to sky holes is their sky holes, quote unquote, are too soft. Whoa. They are amorphous, inept, forgive me, inept smudges of paint that don't look anything like a hole in a tree. They look like somebody who's doing sky holes by the book, but they haven't really caught on yet to the concept. Okay, now pause right there. I'm going to put my glasses back on for a second. I'm going to do something right now to help rectify the situation a little bit. Now again, I dare not do this too much, but I can do something. So I have a fan brush. The next best thing to a fan brush, by the way, would be one of these cheap chip brushes. Okay, so you see what I'm doing? I'm just intentionally, very much softening edges. Now, I don't want them all soft. So if I do this too much, then I'll need to come back and do mix in a few hard. But it looks to me like I still have a fair number of hard edges in there. So I think I'm okay. That is better than it was just a few minutes ago. Okay, so that I'm going to keep that fan brush right handy because I'm going to be using it a whole bunch. Okay, so let's continue. The danger of sky dots. And by the way, I'm not going to do, I'm going to do a little bit more, and then I'm going to move somewhere else and come back to it. It would be a mistake, and this is a rule. Is my face on your screen? I think it is now. General rule: don't work on one thing and finish it. Work on one thing a little while, and then move somewhere else, then come back to it. Okay, you already know that, don't you? Okay, so what makes sky holes turn into sky dots? Are these too similar of a size, too many hard edges, and even sometimes too similar of a color? Now, that gets us into a whole Pandora's box, because sky holes don't work unless they are in fact the same color as the sky, the background sky. And that's a huge mistake that I see students making all the time. If you're a student, listen to me. The color of your sky holes needs to be the same color as your sky. And if your sky, hopefully, is more than one color, as mine is, then the color of the sky holes needs to follow the overall color of the sky. I don't want to explain that any more than that. That's enough. Okay, but once you've got that down, then you should understand too that variety of color, this is a subservient variety. It's important that the sky dots be the same as the color of the sky. Once you get that down, then you go, but within that realm, you can add a little bit of variety. That will help diminish the dreaded sky dot phenomenon. Okay? I've never done quite this extensive a teaching on sky holes before, I don't think. So it's about time. I don't have the right color yet. A little bit of phthalo. Can anybody say a little bit of phthalo? Somebody please say, watch out for that phthalo. All right, I think I have to get up and down a little step stool every time I have to mix up a new color on these brushes. I'll get a good workout in the next couple of days. Up and down, up and down. Ah, I'm gonna take my glasses off again. Save squinting. One slight advantage about getting older. You can take off your corrective lenses and I'm going to stand back now. Put my glasses on, stand back out the driveway and take a look at that. All right, that's good enough for now. I'm going to just move on. So I'm very conscious of the interaction here. See these little bits of red that have escaped out into the tree in the sky? Very important, very, very important. One of the breakable laws of painting is we like to see our eye. The American, no, that's so funny. That's not what I meant. The human eye likes to see little bits of the object escaping into the background and little bits of the background escaping into the object. If you don't know this, then learn it. So in this case, the object is the red and white sign. The background is the blue sky. We like to see little bits of the object that has escaped, that little bits have escaped into the sky. And that's exactly what we have here. See these little bits of red all over? We like that. Conversely, we like to see little bits of the background that have escaped into the object. So I'm going to come in here with some blue, sky blue on my brushes, and just in a very, so to speak, artificial manner. That is to say, this is not reflected in the photograph. I am not doing this because the photograph says, hey, I've got blue in these letters. No, I do not see any blue in those letters. It's a little bit too contrived, so let me mess it up. A little bit of blue right there. Right? That's what our eye likes to see. And you might say to me, why? Oh, that's a good question. I do have an answer. I don't even want to get that deep right now. So let's just leave that. Okay? Because I said so. I'll tell you what, before I leave this sign though, let's go ahead. I told you I like to apply one color and then come back and do slightly. So let me do two things. Lighter white here. Are you following me? The principle is when you're painting in opaque phase, opaque layers, which for many oil painters, that means from the get-go, you paint opaque the entire process. But that's not the way I paint. Me and Rembrandt, we don't paint that way. But when you enter the opaque phase, we like to see slightly lighter, slight is the important word, slightly lighter on top of what we just put down. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is the same color that I put down a few minutes ago on this white part of the sign. There, that's probably enough right there. And I'm going to do the same thing with the red. So mix up a slightly lighter Now, making a light red, if you've ever, that's a very strange endeavor, ordeal. Because if you just take red and add white to it, what do you get? You don't get a light red. You get a sort of a sickly pink. So in most of the time, you need to warm it up quite a bit with yellow or orange. All right, that's all I'm going to say about that. There. So now I'm adding, again, following this rule, this principle. Ooh, isn't it nice? Are you zoomed in there? Yes, you are. You see how that just sparkle is a really good word for this. Speaking of sparkle, let me wax, not quite philosophical, but strategic for just a minute. I was looking at some paintings the other day, and I realized some people don't understand this yet. And if you're an artist, you really should come to an understanding of a principle I'm about to share with you. One way to state the principle would be our eyes enjoy light. Our eyes can't see anything without light. But let me get a little more specific. Our eyes are drawn to light. Our eyes are drawn to brighter light more than they're drawn to lesser light. But that's not the insight. Here's the insight I want to give you. Our eyes are drawn to, I'm going to make up a word. I'm not really making it up, but in this context, our eyes are drawn to punctiliar light. That is to say, our eyes are drawn to points of light. Our eyes get a kick out of seeing little dots of light. Now, I can give you examples of this, that you have experienced this your entire life, but probably nobody's ever explained it to you. You may think that you like lights on a Christmas tree because, for sentimental reasons, because when you were a child, perhaps. And if you're Jewish, translate some of this to Hanukkah, but it doesn't really matter. I'm being a little bit silly. Many of you have Christmas trees. Anyway, just as kind of our broader culture. But you may think that you like lights on your Christmas tree, and they give you a warm, fuzzy feeling, so to speak. Many of you think that you like, because they are Christmas tree lights, because of association with your childhood and so forth. Well, I have a proposal for you. It's quite the contrary. The deeper reason that people put little, especially in the last 40 years, the little sparkly, tiny little lights on their Christmas tree is not because of emotional association, like that's what people do at Christmas, or that's what you did as a child, or anything like that. In fact, the reason people put little twinkly lights on their tree is quite the opposite. It's because human beings like to see little points of light, period, regardless of what the association is. Are you with me? In other words, Christmas tree lights are sparkly because human beings like sparkly lights, not vice versa. In other words, we don't like sparkly lights because they remind us of Christmas or whatever. As you probably know, I paint an awful lot of weddings, and they tend to be high-end weddings because it's only high-end weddings that can afford my services for the most part. So I step into, many weekends, I step into a reception area, typically, banquet type area, table, that has been decorated by professionals to create an enchanting mood. This all goes without saying, right? But I'm just trying to spell it out so you, right? I believe I have never ever once in more than 100 weddings ever stepped into a wedding reception where the professional decorators did not utilize this principle to great effect. The one, if you were to just take a creature from another planet with no emotional association with weddings or romance or anything like that, no Pinterest, no bridal magazines, nothing like that. And if you asked them to describe the number one single visual characteristic of a wedding reception, the answer would be twinkly lights. Whether it's twinkly candles or gobo lights or twinkly like Christmas lights on a string, or nowadays it's the sort of the Edison type light bulbs, you know, look like old-fashioned on hanging from, you know, a big wire. Anyway, why do decorators do that? Is it because we're in a habit of that we associate twinkly lights with weddings, therefore every wedding now has to have twinkle? Nope. They may not know this, but the reason they are doing that is because the human mind likes punctiliar lights. Period. All right, you with me so far? Those are I just gave you two examples, weddings and Christmas trees. And I'm saying that we like those points of light not because of their association with Christmas or weddings, but in fact, the fact that we like punctiliar lighting is utilized by people who know what they're doing when they design weddings and or Christmas trees. Okay? Our eyes are drawn, like, we can hardly take our eyes off punctiliar light. Think of fireworks, which is punctiliar light moving. The sparks flying up from a campfire or in a fireplace with a real fire in it. All of those things. So I'm going to rest my case. Now, just also, the only thing I've said so far is our eyes like punctiliar light. Now, if you are a painter, you better know this. Because if you don't, you're screwing up. Sorry, how mean can you be? People watch me because of my soft, gentle manner. That's a lie. If you're an artist and you don't know that people like points of light, yeah, you haven't started painting yet. So this particular painting, let me zoom out for a minute. And let me bring my sketch on aluminum to you here. Part of what makes this little sketch effective is the points of light. Of course, all the headlights, all the taillights, and bigger than that, here, 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 here. In a general dark area, there are all these little points of light. Okay? On my big painting that I'm working right now, I want to maintain or reflect that same reality that the paint to the canvas is going to be filled, but not in a corny way, right? There's the hard part. But the painting's going to be filled, to use the term, punctiliar light, points of light. So if you're an artist and if you're painting the woods, a grove of trees, and the trees are dark against a lightish background, if you don't have points of light in between the trees or in between the branches, you missed an opportunity. Let me use another one. If you're painting marshes, weeds, grass at the beach or in a marsh, and you have grass, and the grass is dark, if you don't have points of light, very distinct points of light coming between the grass, you're not doing it. Okay, that's as much as I'm going to say. And I do know that many people don't get that yet because I see their paintings. That's as far as I'm going to go with that. Take a look at your paintings and say, where's my punctiliar lighting? If you don't see any, you have good reason to scratch your chin and say, maybe I haven't learned that yet. Now, okay, so does Mona Lisa have punctiliar lighting? Not so much. Partly because Mona Lisa, in the Mona Lisa, Da Vinci is utilizing a different pleasing mindset. We've talked about this before. The word for the Mona Lisa is sfumato, Italian or Latin, Italian for smoke, sfumato. Most of the charm of the Mona Lisa is not in punctiliar light, but atmospheric glow, soft edge light. And that's, who am I to criticize? But let's go back or forward a couple more centuries. Rembrandt, punctiliar lighting. Caravaggio. Chiaroscuro is the opposite of sfumato is chiaroscuro, which means I forget what it means. Coruscating, sparkly, hard edge light. That is closer to what I'm talking about, punctiliar light. And Caravaggio is the Rembrandt. Da Vinci is the person we hold up as the paragon of sfumato style of painting. Caravaggio is the person we hold up as the great example of, I'll call it today, punctiliar lighting. Chiaroscuro. All right, there's my green light. Tell me that doesn't look like a green light. We've talked about this before, but maybe some of you weren't there. That's a joke. Painting a colored light in this manner is a trick that I honestly don't know if we paint, as painters, I honestly don't know if we paint bright lights, colored lights in particular, in this manner because of photography. We may do this because of photographs. If you take a camera, any camera, color camera, and take a picture of tail lights or street lights, this is what the camera will do. When you look at your picture, it'll be a colored aura and white in the middle. However, if you and I believe me, I've done this many, many times because I do a lot of plein air painting in towns, and I'm standing there at the intersection, I'm looking at street light, I'm looking at tail lights, headlights, and street lights. And let's take tail lights, for instance. No, I'll stick with green lights. I could stare at that green light, that traffic light, and I stare right at the dead center of that light. It is most certainly not white. It is not white. It is green all the way to the core. That's how our eyes see a bright green light. Green right to the middle. Doesn't look anything like this. And yet, if you paint the way we see, this is a real irony. I do not know the explanation, the scientific explanation of this, if there is one. It may just be psychological, which maybe we do this because of what cameras have taught us. Be that as it may, if you just paint, as a painter, if you paint what you see, green aura and green in the middle, it will look like green paint. It will look like a dot of green on your painting. It won't look like a light. This looks like a glowing light, doesn't it? But that is a mystery, because that's not how we see lights. This is how cameras see lights. So it's possible that in the West, in the civilized world, that the human race has been trained by photographs to see this as a bright colored light. I'm open to that being a possible truth, but it's still a mystery. Why would we, why does that work? The fact is, I know that to you and me both, that looks like a bright green light. Whereas if I made it green all the way to the middle, it would not. It would not have the effect at all. I'm going to do this course a whole bunch with all these headlights, all these tail lights, and a couple more traffic lights. There you go. That's a mystery, and I really don't understand it. But at least, thank God, I know how to do it. So, you know, Thomas Kinkade, painter of light, as you all know, I say this every time. I love saying good things about Thomas Kinkade. It was a lot more fun to have jokes about him when he was still alive. But I like saying good things because as snobby artists, we're all supposed to despise him. I've given this lecture many times, so I will not give it again. I just say I do not approve of snobbery in any form whatsoever. And there was a lot of that when it came to Thomas Kinkade. Mostly it's envy because he made $1 gazillion and I haven't yet, okay? But that's me impugning somebody else's motives, and I might be wrong because you're never supposed to try interpret other people's motives. All right, that's enough of that. But the point is, Thomas Kinkade taught us how to paint lights, among other people. He's not the only one. If you want, G. Harvey, just the letter G, period, Harvey. Another one, paints lights fantastically. There's a famous, you could go Google this one, Rembrandt, Esther and Ahasuerus is the king, Esther and Naaman, I forget, but you just Google Rembrandt, Esther and Naaman. Brilliant. Has Esther, I think it is, has her finger up in front of a candle, and Rembrandt, you know, the finger is red with the light of the candle behind it. Just when you think of, you know, the powers of observation that those old guys, we're all walking in there on their shoulders, you know. They taught us so much how to see that we are indebted to them. All right, I'm happy. This is really starting to take form up here. I'm not done, but I'm going to leave it for now because I need to work in other parts of the painting and make the whole thing rise up together. But I will tell you that at the moment, I'm pretty happy with that. We'll see when I look at it tomorrow with fresh eyes. But look at how messy that is. See, I wish I understood 10 years ago what I understand today. I mean, look at it. Why do I have this white smearing out all over the place? Why is this red? In fact, I thought about something while I was doing a red a while ago. I want to actually come up here and add a little bit more red where there's already some little bits. I want to accentuate it even more. Wow, that is so fun. And you can see both of these signs, light to dark, light to dark. Very intentional, and not, strictly speaking, not a realistic effect. I'm not doing that because the photograph. There's no indication of that in the photograph whatsoever. Do you understand? That is not realism. That's good painting. It's not realism. I'm trying to decide where to go next. And I certainly wish I could raise this. Okay, that's as high as it can go. I'm hitting the ceiling up there. Let's just go. I want to go somewhere sort of boring, middle. So I think maybe this guy on the bench. He's not too bad. I'm going to mix up a dull, medium brown color. A rough facsimile of flesh tone. Can you see he's got his elbow back on the back? It feels to me, I don't know how that happened. It just seems like a fairly natural disposition. Now let's do his face. By the way, for my paintings, any indication of features, facial features, takes these figures toward a cartoony look. So I don't want to, I'm not going to do eyes, mouth, noses, although I would like it if the viewer perceived, oh yeah, hand right there, there we go. Hand on his waist, right here, right at the base of his leg. I would like the viewer to get the impression that they can see features. The one thing I'll do possibly is do a horizontal line through the face. I've got a similar thing going on here with this figure. You see, in fact, I'll go ahead while I've got this dull, dark brown. No, I shouldn't say dark, very mid-tone. I want the viewer to imagine that they're seeing features, but I don't want to paint in features, or it will take on a cartoony aspect really quickly. Very often when I do figures like this, I'll do what you just saw me do, which is paint fairly carefully, like I'm doing right now, and then follow up with a smear or a scratch. So it looks like I'm working on, I guess I am. I'm working on all of these figures right now. Let's work on this guy over here. I can't move my painting over anymore. Okay. Very important principle for me when I'm painting these fairly abstract figures in motion. That's important. Well, this one's not in motion, but these three are all moving. I actually do more definition on these characters, on these figures, by painting the background more than I do by painting the figures themselves. In other words, it's like I'm doing right now. It's a negative painting that I do most carefully. The positive painting, so to speak, when I'm painting the figures themselves, I tend to be more messy. This guy's got horns. Let's fix that. We don't want horns. And look at that. I ended up with a little dark spot right there, completely accidental, but it almost looked like the artist was trying to indicate an eye, and it wasn't in. So I just obliterated that dark spot so nobody would think that, and it didn't look like a good eye either. I didn't do it on purpose. It was not an eye, but what color do I want this person to be wearing? I want them dark. I want him dark against the street, but not quite as dark as he is right now. So I'm asking myself, what color? Right now he's a dark brown. Very, very neutral, very dull brown, not high chroma at all. Not green, blue, gray. Whew, forgive me while I think here. I don't like him quite the color he is right now. He's a little bit dark for one thing, so that's good. I can lighten him up. That's easy. His legs need some work. I'm going to pursue a very dark bluish gray. So I'm shifting his shape in a cool direction. That would make sense because the reflection of the road behind him and so on is quite warm, so it makes sense if he was cool. So, and this is an opaque color that I've just mixed up. I don't know if it's the right color, though. Let's find out here shortly. Yeah, I think that's all right. Now, his legs are in serious need of plastic surgery. And then I've done all that scribbling. I can actually do a little bit of scratching. You know what? He's walking too slowly. He's walking, as you can see, a car's coming this way and he's walking across. Now, what we don't know from the painting is, let me defend him a little bit. What you can't see is how fast his car is moving. This car could be, you know, crawling along at 5 or 10 miles an hour. So that's what I'm thinking is happening. But let's make this guy get across the street just a little bit faster, so the viewers are not alarmed for his safety. It's not nice to have people get run over right in your painting. So I'm trying now to match the color. Whew, that's way too light. I'm trying to match the color of the road so that I can paint the spaces between his legs. Yeah, that'll do. I'm just going to carry this dull purple that I've mixed up all the way across the road. Does that make sense? There, that's somewhat better. We're not all the way home yet, but that's better than it was. He looks better. His arm's a little bit long. Let's do an armendectomy. We've talked often about, are all my people skinny? And the answer is yes, they are. Unless I'm making a very definite point to depict an old person or an overweight person for some particular reason. Other than that, which is very rare, very rare, yeah, all my people are thin, because I don't want the viewer to think that I'm trying to depict a particular person. It's just an icon of a symbol of a human being, that's all. Very much like a mannequin. And all the mannequins in the stores are size 1, except of course for the full figure, they're size 3. That's a joke. But you know what, you ladies know what I mean. This store caters to larger women, so our mannequins are size 3 instead of the size 0 that's in all the other stores. Anyway, so yes, my figures are all thin. Now, and I have done over the years, of course, many times, done like an old farmer or an old farmer and his wife standing by, you know, walking from the house to the shed, or from the shed to the house, or some such thing. In fact, I did a painting like that not too long ago. And in that case, it was appropriate for the farmer figure to be a little stockier and not standing quite as straight, you know. In Texas, they had an expression for that. They said when a farmer in Central Texas, oh my goodness, these men worked hard. These ranchers that we lived near, I mean, they worked hard. And when they got old, they were all stooped and, you know, big arthritic hands. I never saw hands so large as the hands I saw in Central Texas. Anyway, the expression was, he's all stove up. Isn't that picturesque language? He's all stove up. I don't know where the stove came from, but it's hilarious. It's so graphic. Am I on screen for you there? Yeah. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about what I'm doing with these figures. I'm going to continue to practice what I preach. That guy's got a coat and tie on, or at least a coat. I can't see the tie, but it looks like he's got an open collar, and I kind of like that. I was going to say, let me tell you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to leave them for now and come back later. A little bit of pencil on this guy's hand right here. Okay, same principle. Don't finish anything all at once. Finish the whole painting. And that is not a Dan Nelsonism. That is a straight up universal art professorism. I often try to let you know when I'm teaching you something that's weird in me versus when I'm saying something that's not, this is not weird. This is the norm. Something just appeared that I like. I've been wrestling with the top of this car, and there's a reason for it. In the photograph, that this vehicle has a topper on it. It's called, I think the topper is called a Westphalia. It's like you see it in the mountains a lot. It's like some kind of storage compartment, or maybe even more like a headroom, extra room on inside the passenger compartment. Anyway, I've been going back and forth and back and forth. I think I just realized, no, if I just turn that into a luggage rack, people will buy it visually better, and it saves me doing some awkward stuff that I don't really understand. I don't really understand the photograph completely. So yeah, there we go. That's a good solution, good fix. Now I'm going to work on this car just a little bit. So, and I know this broadcast is going on and on. This guy drones on forever, they say. And people come and go, watchers come and viewers come and go. Mostly go. They fall like flies. Got a phone coming in? No, I'm going to let my machine get that. Okay, so I've mixed up a fairly dull, a fairly dull gray, coolish gray. I'm not sure it should be cool. I'm playing tentatively with the color here. Anyway, I want to render some and I added this tire to the, you know what I mean, a wheel well, I don't know, whatever you call this thing, a tire cover, a wheel cover. I think it's called a wheel cover. I added that again because to me it feels like a mountain Flagstaff, Arizona. Leaving lots of gaps between brush strokes. When I teach this technique in a class, by the way, this is the point, the final edit layer is the point at which my students tend most consistently to blow it. They'll follow me through step 1 through 14. But when we, especially the students that have some painting experience, which is most of them, right? They in particular have a hard time following me through this last phase, because when we get to this step of the painting process, I know what happens. First of all, they've been doing all kinds of weird things with me all day long. And then when we finally get to this step, they breathe a sigh of relief and go, Whew, thank God, now I know how to do this part. This is how I normally, they say to themselves, this is how I normally paint. And so they in fact proceed to basically plaster their whole painting with layers of opaque paint and thereby completely obliterate and desecrate all the beautiful stuff that we had spent hours putting on their canvas up to that point. Are you with me? So I give them a couple rules. One of the rules is, at this stage of the painting process, now that we're at this point, you cannot have any more than 2 brush strokes touching each other. Your third stroke has to leave a gap. You have to leave a gap between your last one and the next one. So see all these little gaps? Like a gap between that stroke. In fact, there's a gap right there in the middle of it. Stroke, break, stroke, and then I left a gap before I put down this stroke. I don't know if you can see that kind of detail. I hope you can, but that's very significant. And even though I don't practice that rule religiously, so to speak, it is very much, it's a good description of how, in fact, I do paint. Now, I'm having a debate whether I really want these taillights to be on. I know they're on at the moment. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna stick with the program, I guess, and leave those on. So I'm gonna do, and I'll end this broadcast after I finish these taillights. Okay, so let's do this. A little bit of red hitting this guy here. It's real obvious, given, if you will. Hang on, gotta change monitors here. Okay, hang on. Testing 1, 2, 3. All right. So same trick. Paint in the glow first. Now, if at any point like that you get a little bit too much, I'm not sure I'm crazy about this stroke way out here, but I don't get mad at it and like rub it out. And I just rub it out a little bit and see how I like it. See if I like it. All right, now I can proceed toward a lighter, paler red with more orange or yellow in it. Okay, that goes in the. I'm not copying the kind of the vehicle that's in the photograph, so it doesn't really help me to look over there very much. And again, some of the light escaping, of course, onto this man sitting on the bench here. I don't know how many more layers, probably 2 more. Probably 2 more degrees of lightness until I get to the brightest spot in the middle. So I've just picked up a bunch of titanium white on these brushes and then some orange of some kind. Nice and soupy. I like it that way. So you make interesting marks when it's soupy. Again, little bits of light have escaped here and there. Okay, I'm gonna wipe these brushes off again. and dip my brushes straight into titanium white, but they're dirty brushes, right? So they're going to come out a little bit pink, add a little bit of light yellow to that. See, I like the soupiness. Tell you what, I'm going to leave that for now. I'm going to call that finished. It's very possible I'll come back and revisit those taillights later on. Did you hear my lecture earlier this afternoon about punctiliar light? Man, I hope you got that. So many people would benefit by grabbing a hold of that principle. And this is a good example. Of course, punctiliar light with glow is even better than just points of light. Let me sit down for a minute and see if I like this painting. I hope I do. 20 hours in, yeah, I hope I like it. I think I do. But clearly it's time for me to take a break. I'll let this go as broadcasting for today, unless something really exciting happens. I don't think it will. More of the same. Ad nauseum, as the story goes, as the expression goes. Dan Nelson, he's that guy who can paint ad nauseum. It makes you sick. Anyway, I hope you found something helpful and perhaps insightful. If so, leave a comment. Hey, let me look at your chats before I go. I appreciate all you guys leaving a chat. So I'll have a seat here and see what y'all have been up to. I appreciate you making a comment. A lot of good old friends. Susan Zerung. This is huge. Thank you, Susan. I'm glad you like the painting. Bill Vape says, hey. Susan, so happy you fixed the people with the right leg on it. The P with the R leg on it. I'm with you now. That was bothering you, wasn't it? I understand. You're probably not even watching anymore, Susan, but thank you. And FEMOC says, that's why brakes are good too. You are exactly correct. My goodness, you guys, I must have a bunch of really good artists watching, because you guys are really hitting it. Can I do the whole painting? It's hard to see and would like to see better before you go. Susan, I've gone back and forth. I hope that does. Of course, when I finish the painting, I will post a good image of it in YouTube, my channel, right? Dan the Art Man, communities, right? There's playlists, videos, community, about something like that at the top of my channel. Hit community, that's where I put all my still images, okay? And especially on a painting this important, I always post a good image of that. But the edge of signs tend to fade to pinkage. I agree, David. Yep. Did I answer how cold it was? This morning it was 30 something. It's quite warm now, as you can see. I've taken off a couple layers, doing quite well. Dan, Susan says, if you wanted to create depth between the light sign and the tree limbs, what would you do? I hope I've done it. Generally speaking, the things that are up close are sharper, and the things that are further behind are softer, and I think I've done that. That's a very good question. And of course, I'm going to revisit the whole painting. I'm not done with any of it. But if it feels like the tree is literally right behind, in my thinking, is right behind these signs. So it's not far away. But I think it does look like it's sitting behind the signs, all right. I hope I've accomplished that. Here's a new viewer, 7776. 7776. Cool. Like your name. I like it, Dan. Good job. Thank you. Appreciate that. Hey, David, I'll look forward to seeing your stuff on Facebook. Thanks for that notice there. Thinker888, good to hear from you again. Thinker, is this a commission? No. Do big paintings sell well? The answer is no. So why am I doing big paintings? Because I want to. And I've sensed this impetus in me to follow my dreams, do what I want to do what I really want to do. Now, I'm not so stupid that I'm going to do this at the point of at foreclosure, losing our house, you know. So if it doesn't work, I'll abandon ship. I'll turn around. But I'm hoping and praying that I'll find a way to market big paintings. But that's a very good question. No, generally speaking, large paintings do not sell well. G. Thringo, GD, you're so good. Thank you. G. Thringo. I love it. Love your name. Don't know how to say it, but I like it anyway. Mark Toomey, good to have you, man. Mark Toomey, I talked about sky dots earlier before you got on. And Rick Ramblett. Oh, man. Rick, are you still there? I hope so. Hey, man. It's really fun. Every once in a while, I'll see a real friend. I have lots of online friends, and I do consider you real friends, but nice to see one that I knew in the flesh. Rick, thank you, man. Appreciate it. Fun to have you on board. Okay, I think that's it for today. Like I said, unless something really dynamic starts to happen, I think, man, I need to talk about this, in which case I'll start another broadcast. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks so much for your company. I love it. You really helped me paint better just by being there. You give me somebody to talk to, and the teacher always learns more than his pupil. So that's one of the reasons I enjoy